Iriayo, Olu said in a low voice, glancing around to make sure they were not overheard. I've heard something troubling. Chief Adekunle and his men are planning to disrupt the alliance. They are plotting to turn the king against the prince and bring the whole thing crashing down. Iriayo's heart sank. She had suspected that Chief Adekunle was up to no good, but this confirmation of his intentions was worse than she had feared. Welcome to Fortune City Stories. Do remember to subscribe, like, and comment, and continue story. The story starts in a semi-modern Fortune City with the sale of Iriayo. In the heart of the village of Irepodo, life moved with a slow, predictable rhythm of the season. The village was a patchwork of thatched huts and lush greenery, nestled between rolling hills and fertile plains. Here, Iriayo lived with a family in a modest home, surrounded by the daily bustle of village life. Her father was a respected farmer, while her mother tended to the household and cared for Iriayo's younger siblings. Iriayo, at 15, was known for her beauty and intelligence. Her dark eyes sparkled with curiosity, and her quick wit made her a favorite among the village children. But beneath her cheerful exterior lay a growing unease as rumors of impending hardship began to grow. The once prosperous village had fallen on hard times. Droughts had withered the crops, and her father's field was no longer as bountiful as they once were. The village's leaders had been forced to make difficult decisions to ensure their survival, and whispers of a desperate measure reached every corner of Irepodo. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky with hues of orange and pink, a group of men from a neighboring kingdom arrived in Irepodo. Their presence was both unexpected and foreboding. They were emissaries from Egbodo, the king renowned for its wealth and power, but which lands are rumored to be in need of fresh resources and alliances. The villagers gathered in huge groups, their faces etched with worries. Olanrewaju stood at the forefront, his expression grim. The emissaries, led by a stern-faced man named Olufemi, were negotiating with the village leaders, discussing terms that seemed to involve more than just trade or hate. In the midst of the gathering, Iriayo's heart sank as she overheard fragments of the conversation. The emissaries had proposed a troubling solution to their predicament, a trade of goods for the people. Specifically, they sought individuals to serve as servants or courtiers in Egbodo. The terms were clear. A trade of 10 gold for one person. Iriayo's breast caught in her throat. She knew that her family was struggling, but the idea of being sold into service was a bit to swallow. The thought of leaving her home and family was unbearable, yet the alternative was equally bleak. With a heavy heart, she saw her father's face hardened as he made the agonizing decision to agree to the terms. The morning of Iriayo's departure arrived with the sky as somber as the mood that enveloped the village. A chill hung in the air, as if the earth itself mourned the loss of one of its own. The village square, usually bustling with life, was quiet and reserved, the usual chatter replaced by hushed conversations and worried glances. Iriayo stood at the edge of the square, her belongings, simple clothes and a few cherished personal items tied into a burden. Her father and mother, their faces etched with grief, stood beside her. Her father tried to maintain a strong facade, but his eyes betrayed the anguish. Her mother gripped Iriayo's hand tightly, her voice breaking as she whispered words of love and farewell. Iriayo's family was present, their eyes red with tears. Her mother clutched her younger sister tightly, while her father stood stoically by her side. Iriayo tried to maintain composure, but her hands trembled as she prepared to leave. Across for them, a small group of men had gathered, including the buyer, the wealthy man from Egbodo, dressed in the opulent robes and adorned with gold jewelry. He exuded an air of authority and misery. His eyes were cold and calculating, assessing the scene with a detached interest. Accompanying him were his aides, who carried the goats, 10 in total. Their bleats, a stark reminder of the transaction about to take place. The transaction was straightforward, though deeply painful. The coats were handed over to Olatunde, their value symbolized by the clinking of metals and the exchange of goods. Irayo's heart sank as she watched her family's future being battered in such a dehumanizing way. Her mother tried to hide her tears, while her father's shoulders slumped under the weight of the burden he carried. As the final arrangements were arranged, the buyer approached Irayo. His gaze was stern, but there was a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. He introduced himself as Prince Adedimeji, a nobleman from the kingdom of Egbodo. His voice was firm but not uncalm, and he spoke with a hint of curiosity as he asked Irayo about her name and background. The emissaries led Irayo and the other selected individual to the waiting caravan. The animals, laden with supplies and guided by stern soldiers, were a stark contrast to the simple life she had known. The journey to Egbodo was long and arduous. Prince Adedimeji's caravan were lavish, with elaborate tent and servant attending to every need. Irayo traveled in a separate carriage, its interior richly decorated but cold. The discomfort of the carriage was a stark contrast to the opulence surrounding her, and she spent the journey gazing out of the window, her mind filled with questions about a new life. And as the caravan made its way through the rugged terrain, Irayo reflected her life in Irepodo. Her thoughts were a whirlwind of sadness and anxiety. The journey was filled with moments of quiet introspection, broken only by the occasional exchange with fellow travelers and the ever-present tension on the air. Irayo wondered about the future in Egbodo, the people she will meet, and the light she will lead in a kingdom so different from our own. As the days passed, the landscape changed, and the familiar rolling hills of Irepodo to the more rugged terrain of Egbodo. Upon reaching the border of Egbodo, the caravan was met with a grand reception. The contrast between the two kingdoms, the opulence and grandeur of Egbodo, was evident in every detail. The carriage finally rode into the grand city of Egbodo, a towering structure and bustling streets, a far cry from the simplicity of a village. The city was a realm of splendor, with people dressed in fine silks and golden ornaments, and the air was filled with clamor of thriving metropolis. The carriage came to a halt before a magnificent palace, its grandeur surpassing anything Irayo had ever imagined. The palace was a sprawling complex of marble and gold with lush gardening and towering spires. Servants and guides lined the path, their eyes curious as they observed the new arrival. Irayo was struck by the bustling cityscape, the impressive architecture, and the regal demeanor of those who welcomed them. As she entered the palace, however, Irayo's emotions were a tangled mix of awe and apprehension. Prince Adedimeji escorted Irayo inside, through corridors adorned with intricate tapestries and shimmering chandeliers. The opulence of the palace was overwhelming, yet it did little to ease Irayo's apprehension. She was led to a modest but elegant room, a new quarter in the palace. The room, while comfortable, felt alien and intimidating, a stark contrast to the simplicity of her previous life. She was greeted by the palace staff and introduced to her new role. The transition from her life in Irepodo to this foreign environment was jarring. The customs and expectations in Egbodo were unfamiliar. Irayo struggled to find a place in this new reality. As Irayo settled into her new surrounding, the weight of her reality began to sack in. Her old life was now a distant memory, and the future stretched out before her, uncertain and fraught with challenges. The palace of Egbodo, with all its grandeur, was now a new home, a place where she would have to navigate the complexity of court life and find a place amidst the intrigue and splendor. In the silence of her new room, Irayo reflected on the journey that had brought her here. The 10 goats, once a symbol of her family's survival, were now the gateway to a new chapter in her life. As she looked out of the window, the city of Egbodo sprawled before her, a vast expanse of possibility and danger. The stars twinkled in the night sky, a stark contrast to the uncertainty laid before her. She thought of her family back in Irepodo and the life she had left behind. With a deep breath, She steeled herself for the challenges ahead, determined to forge a new path, the kingdom of Egbodo. In this land of royalty and mystery, her first days at the palace were filled with challenges of adapting to a life of servitude, learning the intricate protocol of palace life, and navigating the complex relationships between the court's inhabitants. Despite the difficulties, Irayo resolved to make the best of her situation. She knew that her survival and eventual success depended on her ability to adapt and thrive in this unfamiliar environment. The days following Irayo's arrival in the palace were filled with a whirlwind of new experiences, but none as significant as her interaction with Prince Adedimeji, the very man who had brought her there. Their relationship, though still formal, had begun to evolve beyond mere obligation. The prince, curious, would occasionally seek her out for conversation, often catching her off guard as she tried to navigate the intricate web of court politics. One morning, while Irayo was observing the courtier from a quiet corner of the palace gardens, Prince Adedimeji approached her. She stood as he drew near, bowing respectfully. "You seem to enjoy watching others from the sideline," the prince remarked. His tone light but his gaze sharp. Irayo hesitated before responding. "It's a useful place to learn, Your Highness." The prince smiled, clearly pleased with her response. "Indeed, knowledge is power. Here, the more you observe, the better you will understand how to navigate this palace." Their conversations always had a dual purpose. While Prince Adedimeji offered Irayo advice on how to survive and thrive within the palace, he was also assessing her, weighing her potential. He had brought her into this world, and now he seemed intent on seeing just how far she could go within it. In the days that followed, Irayo took his word to heart. She began to pay closer attention to the inner workings of the palace, using the prince's guidance to sharpen the understanding. She listened to the conversations of nobles, picked up on the subtle power play between the courtiers, and quickly realized that the palace was a battlefield where information was the greatest weapon. Prince Adedimeji, for his part, seemed to appreciate Irayo's growing awareness. Their relationships was no longer merely that of prince and servant. There was a mutual respect between them, a connection forged through shared ambition and understanding of the palace's complexity. Irayo knew that her future within the palace was tied to his. She was determined to prove herself worthy of the chance he had given her. The alliance. The days following Irayo's encounter with Prince Adedimeji were filled with a newfound sense of purpose. She had taken his words to heart, understanding that in the palace of Egbodo, knowledge was indeed power. She began to pay closer attention to the happenings within the palace walls, listening to conversation, observing interactions, and piecing together the intricate webs of alliances and rivalries that governed life in the court. Egbodo was a kingdom of great wealth, but it was also a place where ambition and intrigue thrive. The court was full of factions, each vying for influence in favor of King Abafemi. At the center of it all was Prince Adedimeji, whose position as the king's nephew made him a key player in kingdom's politics. Although he was not the king's son, many whispered that he was being groomed to one day take over the throne, especially given the king's advancing age and the lack of a clear heir. One evening, as Irayo was finishing her duties in the kitchens, she overheard a conversation between two courtiers who were discussing an important development. They spoke in hushed tones, but Irayo managed to catch enough of the exchange to understand that the crucial meeting was about to take place, and meeting that could determine the future of the kingdom. Queen Amara was sending her envoys to finalize. This alliance could change everything for Egbodo. Irayo's curiosity was piqued. She heard of Queen Amara, the powerful ruler of a neighboring kingdom known for her wisdom and strategic acumen. An alliance between Egbodo and Queen Amara's kingdom would undoubtedly shift the balance of power in the region. Determined to learn more, Iriayo began to seek out any information she could find about the impending alliance. She discovered that the negotiation had been going on for months, with both sides eager to secure a partnership that would strengthen their respective kingdoms. For Egbodo, the alliance was seen as essential for securing trade routes and military support, while for Queen Amara, it offered a valuable opportunity to expand her influence. As the day of the meeting approached, the palace buzzed with anticipation. Prince Adedimeji was at the forefront of the negotiations, tasked with ensuring that Egbodo secured favorable terms. Iriayo knew that this was a chance to prove herself, to show that she could be more than just a servant in the background. On the day of the meeting, Iriayo managed to position herself near the council's chamber where this negotiation were taking place. She was careful to remain inconspicuous, blending in with the other servants as she went about her task. The doors to these chambers were closed, but Iriayo could hear the low murmur of voices from within. The meeting lasted for hours, and as the day turned into night, Iriayo remained at her post, listening intently. She could make out the voices of Prince Adedimeji and Queen Amara's envoy, their tones measured and deliberate. The stakes were high, and every word was carefully chosen. Finally, as the negotiation drew to a close, the doors to the chamber was opened and the envoys emerged, their expressions serious but satisfied. Prince Adedimeji followed shortly after, his face betraying nothing of the outcome. Iriayo watched as he exchanged a few words with the king before making his way back to his chambers. Sensing an opportunity, Iriayo quickly made her way to the prince's quarters. She knew that she was taking a risk, but the chance to learn more about the alliance was too valuable to pass up. When she arrived, she found Prince Adedimeji seated at his desk, his brow furrowed as he reviewed the terms of the agreement. He looked up as she entered, surprised but not displeased by her presence. "Iriayo," he said, setting aside the documents, "what brings you here at this hour?" Iriayo hesitated for a moment before speaking. "Your Highness, I've been following the negotiation closely. I couldn't help but notice the importance of this alliance for Egbodo. I want to know if there's anything I can do to assist you." The prince raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued by her boldness. "You've been paying attention then?" "Yes, Your Highness. I believe that understanding the dynamics of the courts and the kingdom is crucial, especially in times like this." Prince Adedimeji regarded her thoughtfully for a moment before nodding. "You're right. This alliance with Queen Amara is critical for Egbodo's future. We've secured favorable times, but there are still challenges ahead." He gestured for Iriayo to sit, and she did so, feeling a mixture of excitement and nervousness. The prince began to explain the details of the agreement, outlining the trade routes that would be established, the military support that would be provided, and the cultural exchanges that were planned. It was clear that the alliance was designed to be mutually beneficial, but it also required careful management to ensure its success. As Prince Adedimeji spoke, Iriayo absorbed every detail, her mind racing with possibilities. She realized that this was a chance to contribute in a meaningful way, to use her knowledge and insights to help shape the future of the kingdom. "Your Highness," she said after a moment, "if I may suggest, it would be wise to ensure that the people of Egbodo are fully aware of the benefit of this alliance. There are those who may be resistant to change, especially if they feel their interests are threatened. If we can communicate the advantage clearly, it will help to build support and prevent dissent." Prince Adedimeji smiled, impressed by her insights. "You think like a strategist, Iriayo. You're right. We need to win the hearts and minds of the people. I'll make sure that part of our approach moving forward." Iriayo felt a surge of pride at his word. This was the validation she had been seeking, proof that she could contribute in ways that went beyond her role as a servant. She knew that her position in the palace was changing, and with it, her prospect for the future. In the days that followed, Iriayo became more involved in the preparations for the alliance. She worked closely with Prince Adedimeji and his advisors, helping to craft messages that could be shared with the people of Egbudu. Ideas were well received, and she quickly earned a reputation for her sharp mind and strategic thinking. As the alliance with Queen Amara's kingdom was officially announced, the palace was filled with a sense of anticipation and hope. The partnership promised to bring prosperity and security to both realms, and the people of Egbudu began to rally behind it. For Iriayo, the success of the alliance was a turning point. She had proven herself to be more than just a servant. She was now a trusted advisor to one of the most powerful men in the kingdom. The path ahead was still uncertain, but Iriayo knew that she had taken the first steps towards securing a future that she could shape with her own hands. And as she looked out over the palace grounds, where preparations were being made for a grand celebration to mark the alliance, Iriayo felt a sense of satisfaction. She had come a long way from the village of Ivrepodun, and though the journey had been difficult, it had also brought her to this moment. One where her destiny was finally within grasp. The alliance with Queen Amara brought a wave of prosperity to Egbudu. Trade flourished, new alliances were formed, and the kingdom's position in the region was solidified. Iriayo's influence within the court grew alongside this newfound prosperity. She had become a close confidant of Prince Adedimeji. Her counsel sought on matters both strategic and personal. Her sharp mind and careful observations had earned her the trust of those in power, and she was increasingly seen as an indispensable part of the prince's inner circle. However, not everyone was pleased with the changes brought about by the alliance. Beneath the surface of Egbudu's newfound wealth and stability, there simmered a growing discontent. Factions within the court who had been sidelined by the new order began to conspire, their envy and ambition driving them to seek ways to undermine the alliance. With it, the power of Prince Adedimeji. One such faction was led by Chief Adekunle, a powerful noble who had long resented the prince's influence over the king. Chief Adekunle had once been a close advisor to King Obafemi, but with the rise of Adedimeji and the alliance with Queen Amara, his stars had waned. He viewed the alliance as a threat to his own power. He was determined to see it unravel. Iriayo, ever vigilant, began to notice the subtle signs of dissent. She observed how Chief Adekunle and his followers would gather in secret, how their conversations would cease when she entered the room, and how they would cast suspicious glances in her direction. It was clear that something was brewing, and Iriayo knew that she needed to act quickly to protect the alliance and the future of Egbudu. One evening, as Iriayo was making her way to her quarters, she was approached by one of Prince Adedimeji's loyal servants, a young man named Olu. He had been a trusted ally since she arrived in the palace, and she knew that it could be relied upon for information. Iriayo, Olu said in a low voice, glancing around to make sure they were not overheard. "I've heard something troubling. Chief Adekunle and his men are planning to disrupt the alliance. They are plotting to turn the king against the prince and bring the whole thing crashing down." Iriayo's heart sank. She had suspected Chief Adekunle was up to no good, but this confirmation of his intentions was worse than she had feared. The alliance was not just a political agreement, it was the cornerstone of Egbudu's future. If it were to fail, the kingdom would be thrown into chaos, and all the progress they had made would be undone. "Do you know what they are planning?" Iriayo asked, her mind racing as she considered the implications. Olu nodded. "They are going to spread rumors about the prince, accuse him of using the alliance to further his expansion at the expense of the kingdom. They will try to convince the king that the alliance was a mistake, that is weakening Egbudu instead of strengthening it." Iriayo clenched her fist, anger and frustration bubbling up inside her. She knew that Chief Adekunle's lies could easily find fertile ground in the courts, where jealousy and ambition often trumped loyalty and truth. If the king were to be swayed by these accusations, it would spell disaster for everything she and Prince Adedimeji had worked for. We can't let that happen, she said firmly. We need to counter their lies with the truth, and the people of Egbodo need to see the benefit of the alliance. And the king needs to be reminded why we pursued it in the first place. Olu nodded in agreement. What do you want me to do? I need you to gather as much information as you can about Chief Adekunle's plans, Iriayo instructed. We need to know who is involved and what they're saying and where they're meeting. The more we know, the better prepared we will be to stop them. Olu agreed and slipped away into the shadows, leaving Iriayo to contemplate her next move. She knew that time was of the essence. The longer Chief Adekunle and his followers were allowed to plot, the greater the danger to the alliance and to Egbodo. The next day, Iriayo met with Prince Adedimeji in his private chambers. She wasted no time sharing what she had learned, laying out the full extent of the threat posed by Chief Adekunle and his followers. We need to act quickly, Iriayo said. If we allow these rumors to spread unchecked, they could do irreparable damage. We need to get ahead of this. Prince Adedimeji listened carefully, his expression grave. He knew as well as Iriayo did that the stakes were high. The alliance with Queen Amara was his crowning achievement, a testament to his vision for Egbodo's future. If it were to fail, it would be a blow not just to his ambitions, but to the kingdom itself. You're right, the prince said after a moment. We need to act, but we need to be smart about it. We can't just silence our enemies. That will only give credence to their accusation. We need to win the battle of public opinion. Together, Iriayo and Prince Adedimeji devised a plan to counter Chief Adekunle's schemes. They will use the very tools that the chief and his followers were employing, words and influence. They will do so with truth by their side. First, they will arrange for a series of public events to showcase the benefit of the alliance. This will include ceremonies marking new trade agreements, military demonstrations highlighting the increased security provided by the partnership with Queen Amara, and the cultural exchanges that would underscore the shared values and the mutual respect between the two kingdoms. Second, they would work to bolster the loyalty of key figures within the court. Iriayo would use her growing influence to speak with those who were wavering, reminding them of the importance of unity and the dangers of division. Prince Adedimeji, for his part, would use his authority to reward those who remained steadfast in their support, ensuring that they had a stake in the alliance's success. Finally, they would prepare to confront Chief Adekunle directly. Iriayo would gather evidence needed to expose his treachery, while Prince Adedimeji would present it to the king at the opportune moment. It was a risky strategy, but they knew that the only way to defeat the chief's lies was to bring them into the light. As the plan was set in motion, Iriayo felt a renewed sense of determination. She knew that the path ahead would be difficult, but she also knew that she had come too far to turn right now. That the fate of Egbodo and her own future depended on the success of the alliance. She was ready to do whatever it took to protect it. And so, as the days passed, the battle for Egbodo's future began to unfold. It was a battle fought not with swords and spears, but with words, influence, and cunning. Iriayo knew that the outcome was far from certain, but she also knew that she had the skills and the resolve to see it through. As she watched the event she had helped to organize unfold and saw the tide of public opinion begin to shift in their favor, Iriayo felt a growing sense of hope. The alliance was strong, and so was her resolve. She was no longer just a girl from a small village. She was a force to be reckoned with, strategist and a leader in her own right. But as the day of reckoning of Chief Adekunle drew near, Iriayo knew that the most difficult challenges were still to come. The future of Egbodos hung in the balance, and it would take all of her cunning and courage to ensure that it was a future she could be proud of. The tension in the palace was palpable as Iriayo and Prince Adedimeji prepared for the final confrontation of Chief Adekunle. The court had been abuzz with whispers and rumors of lake, with factions forming around the two opposing forces. The success of public event had shifted much of the court's opinion in favor of the alliance, but Chief Adekunle and his followers were still a dangerous force, one that needed to be neutralized before they could do any lasting damage. Iriayo had spent the day leading up to the confrontation gathering evidence of Chief Adekunle's treachery. With Olu's help, she had obtained documents, overheard conversations, and identified the key players in the conspiracy. The chief's plan was clear. He intended to sow discord between Egbodo and Queen Amara, forcing King Obafemi to dissolve the alliance and return to the kingdom's former isolationist policy. This would not only weaken Egbodo, but also leave it vulnerable to external threat, a scenario that would benefit only those who sought power for themselves. On the morning of the confrontation, the royal court assembled in the great hall of the palace. The room was filled with nobles, advisors, and dignitaries, all eager to see the outcome of the struggle for power that had gripped the kingdom. At the front of the hall, King Obafemi sat on his throne, his expression stern and unreadable as he waited the proceedings. Prince Adedimeji stood by the king's side, his posture calm but alert. Iriayo, positioned discreetly among the prince's closest advisor, felt a surge of anticipation. The moment of truth had arrived. Let the accused step forward. The king's herald announced, his voice echoing through the hall. Chief Adekunle emerged from the crowd, his head held high, and his expression one of defiance. He was flanked by his followers, who murmured their support as he took his place before the throne. Iriayo noted the way he carried himself, confident and unyielding, a man who believed he still held the upper hand. Chief Adekunle, King Obafemi began, his voice carrying the weight of authority. You stand accused of conspiracy against the king, crown, of spreading falsehood, and of endangering the security of this kingdom. How do you plead? Chief's eyes narrowed as he regarded the king. I plead not guilty, your majesty, he replied, his tone measured. I have only ever acted in the best interest of Egbodo. If questioning the wisdom of this alliance is considered a crime, then so be it. But I have done nothing more than speak the truth as I say it. A murmur of agreement rose from the chief's supporters, but was quickly silenced by a stern look from the king. The truth, as you say it, the king repeated, his tone cold. Yet, others have brought evidence that suggests your truth is nothing more than a web of lies, they spawn to save your own ambitions. At the king's signal, Iriayo stepped forward. She has spent countless hours preparing for this moment, ensuring that this moment was in place. Every piece of evidence irrefutable. With your majesty's permission, I'll present the evidence, she said, her voice steady. King Obafemi nodded, and Iriayo began to lay out the kings against Chief Adekunle. She presented the document that detailed his secret meetings, the report from witnesses who had overheard his treacherous plans, and the records of payments made to those who had been bribed to support his cause. Each piece of evidence was met with gaps and murmurs from the court, the weight of the accusation becoming more undeniable with every revelation. As Iriayo spoke, she watched Chief Adekunle closely. She saw the shift in his demeanor from defiance to uncertainty, as the full extent of his action was laid bare before the court. His supporters, once vocal, grew increasingly silent, their confidence shaken by the damning evidence. When Iriayo finished her presentation, the hall was filled with a tense silence. All eyes turned to Chief Adekunle, awaiting his response. The chief's face had gone pale, and for a moment he seemed at loss for words. But then he straightened, his pride refusing to let him back down completely. This is all circumstantial, he protested, though his voice lacked the strength that he had before. These are just accusations, twisted interpretations of my actions. I have only served this kingdom faithfully. King Obafemi's gaze was hard as he regarded the chief. Yet, the evidence before us paints a different pictures. You have betrayed the trust placed in you by this court and by me. You have endangered the very stability of Egbodo for your own gain. The king's words were finally a condemnation that left no room for further argument. Chief Adekunle's followers, sensing the shift in power, began to distance themselves from him, their loyalty wavering in the face of his impending downfall. Chief Adekunle, King Obafemi continued, "For your crimes against this kingdom, you are hereby stripped of your land and you will be exiled from Egbodo, never to return." The chief's face twisted in a mix of anger and despair, but he knew better than to defy the king's judgment. He bowed stiffly, his pride the only thing keeping him from collapsing under the weight of his disgrace. The court erupted in a mix of relief and approval as Chief Adekunle was led by the king's guard. The threat that had loomed over Egbodo had finally been neutralized, and the kingdom was safe for now. As the crowd began to disperse, Prince Adedimeji turned to Uriayo, his expression one of gratitude and admiration. "You did well today," he said quietly. "Egbodo owed you a dead debt." Uriayo smiled, though a thought was already on the future. The battle may have been won, but the war was far from over. She knew that there would always be those who sought to disrupt the kingdom's peace, who would challenge the alliance she had worked so hard to protect. But she also knew that she was ready for whomever came next. Uriayo had proven herself a force to be reckoned with, a leader in her own right. And as she stood beside Prince Adedimeji, she knew that together they would continue to shape the future of Egbodo, no matter what challenges lay ahead. Years passed, and the bond between Uriayo and Prince Adedimeji deepened, growing from a steadfast friendship into a love that became the heart of the kingdom. As Uriayo came of age, their union was celebrated with joy throughout Egbodo, and she became his wife, a partner in both life and leadership. The wisdom and courage she had shown in her youth only grew with time. And when King Obafemi passed away, the people looked to Uriayo with confidence. As queen, she ruled with the same strength and determination that had once exposed a traitor, now guiding Egbodo into a new era of prosperity and peace, alongside her husband, King Adedimeji. With their reign, the land flourished so greatly that Uriayo was able to extend Egbodo's prosperity to her own village, enriching the lives of her people. She brought her family to live in the palace, securing their place in the royal household. Olumide, the trusted servant who had been by her side throughout thick and thin, rose to become the chief servant, a position of great honor, trusted by both the king and queen. Together, they led Egbodo into an era of unmatched prosperity, their legacy etched into the kingdom's history forever. Thanks for following us on Fortune City Tales. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more journey into the art of African folklore. See you in the next tale.